today's conversations. So we're going to begin as usual. I've got a presentation. I might not do all of it because I'm sort of writing a book as I do this. So I'm doing it quite everything that comes to me, but I'm going to basically do the presentation for about half an hour and then have half an hour where we can talk about things, or I might even do less than that because there's quite a few of us here today. I'm just going to put myself on speaker view as well. So just to let you know, the presentation part of this will go out on my YouTube channel as well. But what I'm going to do it a bit differently today. So I'm not going to record the conversation unless you say you would like me to record you. So I'm kind of changing it round because it feels like so much like really deep personal stuff is coming out of these conversations. I actually feel a bit sort of uncomfortable about putting that part out on YouTube. So I'm going to leave it in your hands if you want to share that more widely. You know, I've never really got any negative comments on my YouTube channel or anything like that, but it feels like it should be, yeah, just kind of keeping the sanctity of the space when we're discussing these sort of deeply feminine issues sometimes. Okay, so I kind of set out on this journey in a different approach to Pluto. Pluto's had a huge effect in my life because I have it in a very strong position in the first house, conjunct my Mercury and my Sun. So it's a very influential planet for me, a very challenging planet for anyone who has it strong in their chart. And also in my 30s, Pluto was transiting my moon for a lot of the time. My moon's in the early part of Capricorn. And that's when I had fertility treatment, which failed. I had an adoption, which eventually broke down. So I kind of really went through the ringer on the whole motherhood thing, a real kind of life, death, rebirth journey. And that's what Pluto's all about in our charts. But where I started from with this is I was really curious about Pluto as the opener to the Kuiper Belt or the trans-Neptunian objects. So we've been looking at some of these, and each one of them represents a new type of consciousness and all these different streams coming online that are available to humanity that weren't discovery. And kind of unbeknown to us in the 1930, when Pluto was discovered, I mean, he was just like a planet for so many years. And then suddenly we realized actually Pluto's a door opener to this whole other realm. So that was like what I'm curious about. And I'm really interested to hear, you know, your take on these things. And even if you don't know anything about astrology, yeah, what you kind of feel is sort of going on with that. Right, hang on. Okay, so I'm trying to open this now, which is not being cooperative to me. Where's it gone? Hey, why is it not sharing? Our first Pluto problem of the day, our first Pluto Mercury problem. Why isn't it? It's like open, but it's not sharing. That's very weird, really. maybe I'll just have to talk through it and not show it, which is a pain because it's often easier visually, isn't it? But I can't, for some reason, it's not opening. So I'm going to just talk to you about what's in it, and I'll try once more, actually, just see if this works. No. Okay, so the discovery of Pluto, it was discovered on the 13th of March, 1930, and by a farm boy in Kansas who had no experience of astronomy at all, called Tom Bow. I think that's how you say his name. And then it got even sort of more odd because an 11-year-old girl called Venetia Burney from Oxford suggested the name Pluto after the Roman god of the underworld. So the discovery story always tells us something about what this body is going to be about. So here we have two kind of ordinary people, both of them are children, so that's kind of extraordinary, who both discover and name this body. So the Disney dog was named after the planet that I used to love when I was a child. So another connection with children there. Pluto was renamed a dwarf planet in 2006. So that was kind of a downgrading of Pluto, and this is when it was kind of acknowledged by the astronomy world that the shocking event had happened, that Pluto was not actually a planet, but there were literally thousands of these other bodies out there. And we learned a lot about Pluto when the New Horizon spacecraft went and photographed it in 2016. So what was really interesting when Horizon photographed it, there were two interesting things. One is that Charon is almost the same size as Pluto. So Charon was considered Pluto's largest moon, but in time, Pluto's actually been designated a binary planetary system. So it's the only binary planetary system we know at this time in our solar system. And that will become sort of relevant later on. And the other thing is that it captured images of Nix, which is one of Pluto's moons, in a very chaotic pattern. So if you imagine our moon has this like waxing and waning cycle, well, Pluto's moon Nix is just like all over the place. So there's this element of chaos that we have with Pluto. And if you have a Pluto transit, that is what you're going to experience, is some chaos. So the mythology of Pluto. Hades is the Greek form of Pluto, who is the god of the underworld. And Hades means unseen. Now, you often get a bit of a distortion, I feel, between the Greek and the Roman deities. You know, the Romans really kind of changed things to suit their system. And, you know, we know that they were kind of taking over the world at that point. So while Hades means unseen and is connected with this kind of very secretive level as Pluto and as an astrology body, Pluto means the giver of wealth. And I've sort of, some of you will have seen I've been doing this codon ring of prosperity mudras for the last 30 days. And I feel like I'm really getting into some, you know, real mysteries around money and the fear, what the fear of survival does to us as humans, the kind of conflict it creates. Okay, so Hades' parents were Titans, Kronos and Rhea. His siblings were Zeus, Poseidon, Demeter, Hera, and Hestia. And in the Roman pantheon, they're called Jupiter, Neptune, Ceres, Juno, and Vesta. So Vesta and Hestia are both goddesses of the hearth. So Hades abducted Persephone into the underworld to be his wife. Basically, Zeus and Hades decided off their own back that Persephone would make a good wife for him. So without consulting Demeter, the mother, or Persephone, the daughter, she was abducted. And finally, she kind of managed to escape because Demeter nearly destroyed the earth. And basically, she said to the gods, if there's no humans, you won't be gods anymore. So she kind of really empowered humanity by making us sort of realize that actually, gods and goddesses are created because we give them that power and that energy. And he did one last sneaky thing. He gave Persephone a pomegranate, and because she ate the seed, she had to be there by his side for at least half the year. And we don't really know how Persephone felt. Maybe she quite liked him. We don't know, do we? But the traditional story is an abduction and rape story. But I sometimes feel, and sometimes you see it depicted in art, there was a kind of erotic current between them. Okay, so I did the charts for this, which I can't show you, obviously. So what I will tell you, though, is that when Pluto was discovered, it was the cross of Eden. So the sun was in the 36 line 1, and the earth in the 6 line 1. So I noticed quite a few of us have Pluto in the 6, and these are quite Plutonic gene keys, I feel. The 36 is all about turbulence, and the 6 is all about division, and they're raising us up into compassion and peace. And then Pluto himself was in the 53 line 3 of the discovery, which is the journey of immaturity to superabundance. So I thought that was interesting again, because, it feels like this whole energy of Pluto is survival, struggle, violence, money, sex, it's all this kind of real raw power stuff. But then if we elevate it, we could get into the superabundance of wealth in the universe on our earth, and how we actually set about sharing that. Okay, so there was an astrologer in the 1930s alive at the time Pluto was discovered, called Isabel Hickey. And she wrote a really interesting pamphlet called Pluto or Minerva, The Choice is Yours. So what Hickey intuited was that Pluto had two faces, a face of destruction and a face of wisdom. And when we see images of Pluto and Minerva, you will often see them depicted with two faces of light and day, dark and night. And given what the New Horizon spaceship discovered, that Charon was actually around the same size as Pluto, so they were redesignated a binary system, I kind of feel she was spot on intuitively, that there is this, you know, kind of quite extreme polarization that we could get. And it feels like it's overcoming this polarization that opens the door to the trans-Neptunian objects. And they're all at the far reaches of our solar system. So essentially, they're all about unity consciousness, but they have different aspects. So Algira, we've done is, you know, that Aboriginal hunter-gatherer consciousness. Gakun is that hunter-gatherer consciousness as well. And yeah, Varuna is all about natural law, also a god of the underworld. So we're kind of working our way through them. Okay. So I have this lovely picture here about synergy, and it's like a architecture, a pattern. So this is from the Gene Keys. Synergy is the ability to draw others together and enthuse and inspire them in such a way that their individual gifts create a higher energetic field. Synergy elevates the elements of hierarchy into a creative communion. So this is connected to Gene Key 45, which is all about the gathering in of the harvest together. It's all about communion. So it is really connected to the sharing of food and resources on our planet. So my feeling in talking about it in subtle body language is that Pluto helps us break through from the mental to the causal body. And as we do that, the dream architecture of Gaia comes alive. The plant and animal kingdoms become one in our consciousness. And this is the indigenous wisdom that tribes have held for millennia, you know, since human beings have existed. And the Gene Keys dream arc, I feel, is kind of really tapping into this new consciousness, although it's never talked about the Kuiper Belt or trans-Neptunian objects. It feels like it's doing the same thing, opening this reality. And this allows us access to higher planes, the Buddhic body, cosmic love, compassion. The atmic body is silence, timelessness, the creator mind. You know, this is very much the sphere of Varuna. And the monadic body knits everything together. And of course, this all links to the Seven Seals teachings as well, which some of you here will be doing. I wanted to mention as well, part of my contemplation is a Scottish writer who was alive in the 1930s called Nan Shepherd, has really come to me in this really powerful way. And this, I feel she sort of illuminates two themes of Pluto, which are sexual energy and war. So Anne Shepherd is middle class in kind of Calvinist Scotland, born after World War I, where there's a massive shortage of men, and especially men for middle class women, because middle class women are basically brought up to get married and have children. So for middle class women to marry a man of a lower class was a real kind of social taboo. So for so many women of that generation, there were no men, and yet they, you know, they had their sexual energy, which society didn't acknowledge at that time. So through the research on Nan Shepherd, all these kind of letters were found from these women, like basically asking like, how do I masturbate, and asking for permission to do that, because the Calvinist sort of religion was so sort of repressive as well. So Nan Shepherd is said to have fallen in love, but that love was unrequited. And she was in love with the same guy for 14 years who was married. And how she transformed her feelings was stomping through the Cairngorm Mountains. And she wrote this really beautiful book of poems called The Living Mountain, which you can get on audio, Amazon Audio. Yes, and her writing was rejected while she was alive. She wrote another one called The Quarry Wood, which was kind of like quite erotic love story. Yeah, but after she died, sorry, while she was still alive, she did receive an honorary doctorate from Aberdeen University. And then she's now actually on the Scottish Note. So she's, you know, her story is like really quite amazing, and I feel like quite a Pluto sort of story. Okay, so you might know that you went through a Pluto transit and have something to share on that. You might want to respond to something I said. You know, maybe you have another woman's story or a man's story that was triggered by that. The Nan Shepherd sort of experience. Anything you want to say, really. So for those of you who arrived a little bit later, I'm actually going to stop the recording. If you would like to be recorded, because this is going on my YouTube channel, you can just ask me to record it. And it's very easy to begin and end. But I kind of wanted us to be able to share without worrying who else might see it, I guess. Because Pluto can get very personal, very sexual, all of that. So yeah, so I'm going to keep quiet now and jump in, whoever would like to.